and welcome to the latest Packaging Europe podcast. Today, I'm pleased to talk about packaging design in more detail. In particular, we'll be looking at what it really means to have breadth in design. We do publish a lot of stories on packaging design, but I'm really keen to hear from the experts that we have joining us today. On that note, I would love to introduce Michelle Beck, who is Director of Merchandising and Private Label at the Fresh Market. She's also joined by Brian Bowers, who is Creative Director at the Fresh Market, and Glyn Robinson, who is Senior Creative Director at Equator Design. So we've invited these three experts to join us today, in particular to talk about a project that they've been working on together. But firstly, I'd just like for them each to just give a little introduction about their backgrounds, their companies, and why they're talking to me today. So perhaps if we start with Michelle.
Awesome. So yes, Michelle Beck, Director of Own Brands at the Fresh Market. I have been with the Fresh Market for over 13 years now, just celebrated that. And the Fresh Market was actually started in 1982 by Ray and Beverly. And it was basically on a European open market concept. They went to Europe, they came back, they created this market. And it's built around the fresh perimeter. People come to us for fresh meat. They come to us for fresh produce. And then we have this great prepared food section in the center, great wine and beer. And then we've got a center store, fresh bulk items, candy, confectionery, and coffee as well. So it's a great market. And I've loved to be a part of it for the 13 years. It's a great brand.
Oh, well, congratulations and thank you for telling us a little bit about your background there. And next, I'd like to hear from Brian, if you could just tell me a little bit about your involvement in this, your background.
Yeah, well, my background is actually at advertising agencies. And so this was my first time coming client side. I've been here, it'll be 10 years in the spring. And I oversee, a small team of designers, an in-house photographer, copywriter. We do most things in-house, store signage, emails, websites, internal communications, construction, signage, as well as private label. And that's where I get to, work with Michelle and the great team over at Equator.
Oh, brilliant. I'm really pleased to have, a range of heads talking to me today on this particular subject. So last but not least, I'd like to hear from Glyn, if you could just tell me a little bit about Equator Design, why we're all here today.
Bless you. Yes, Glyn Robinson, Senior Creative Director over here in Manchester. It's really lovely. It's really lovely chatting like this. I'm looking at Brian and Michelle and thinking, God, we've had this lovely opportunity to kick around together for such a long time now, and I think it's we'll probably touch on this as we go through the session, but there's just been such a joy. Here I am sitting in the north of England, and I feel like I work at the Fresh Market as much as I do Equator, really. I think we've become such a wonderful close knit family, all with that kind of common purpose. But yes, a little bit about myself. Equator Design, I've been there knocking on, it's around 9 years or so. I've been in the industry for 30 odd years. I think me and Brian, as soon as we met each other, I think we've got very similar histories in the business and things, and of course Michelle as well. But yeah, we going back to the very start of this project, I think it's fair to say that I didn't even really know who the Fresh Market were, which seems a curious thing to say, but I think with the ambition of Fresh Market, and Michelle's already mentioned the backstory of the pioneering days of going around Europe and the lovely food markets and things, it was already a lovely opportunity to really get to know each other and create something lovely.
So how long have you been working on this together? How long is this relationship? But you're all laughing.
Yeah, it was a long time coming. I would say we probably spent 2 years talking to them, looking through different vendors, and then selecting them, and then still talking to them. And then finally, okay, now it's time to start this process. So we've been working together probably going on 3 years at this point,
Yes.
3+ years.
Yeah, I was going to say it was about 3.
Where was your starting point, and what was the aim of this project together? Perhaps if I bend Glyn's ear on that one first.
When we first met, it was really quite lovely, because I think right from the start, I loved the honest to goodness approach that we had, where I think we said to you, we don't know you at all. We're 30,000 feet in the air, so we're huge believers that before you even put pencil to paper or try anything, we just need to first know. So those early conversations we were just having some really quite lovely conversations about what does design mean to us, what kind of things do we jump out of bed for in the morning, just those lovely kind of conversations. And for me personally, the project really, really came alive and found its foundation, I think, when we had opportunity to fly out and meet you guys, and I think for me personally, and I know the whole team felt like this on Equator side, having that week and being able to really just enjoy every second of it with Brian and Michelle and with the senior leadership at the Fresh Market, and we got to hang around in the stores and just have lots of conversations, a few cheeky pints of beer in an evening as well, which always helps, but yeah, just that wonderful, wonderful week of discovery, which I think personally was just golden. It laid the foundation, and I know I jumped back on the plane from that thinking, goodness me, I feel like I've got Fresh Market in my heart and my soul, and it set me up for success, and I know it did the team as well. So I think those early introductions were superb.
And Michelle, from your view, what were you looking for when it came to design?
I would say for us, it was time to just update the portfolio. We had just finished an interior refresh. We had just finished elevating all of our interiors and then the sign package. And it was really time to upscale our look on the packaging side, because we are an experiential brand. Packaging for us, that's the look, the feel, the experience, the atmosphere of the store. That was the final thing for this total package of a refreshing of our brand, so to speak. And then honestly, if you just walked our brand, it was an outdated look. It was a cookie cutter approach. I would say a long time ago, we really valued a treasure hunt approach and a discovery of our brand, and everything was individualized. It looked different to the point where you couldn't really tell what our brand was. And so leadership at the time decided that's not a good approach. You should be able to tell what your brand is. And so then it went full circle the other way and became this rigid cookie cutter look. Everything looked the same, and there was just no individuality or personality. And that is just not who we are. And so we came back true to who we were as a brand. We wanted to be relevant with our guests and really to start attracting that future guest. So those were, I think, the 3 things that were really driving us towards that next brand refresh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just building on what Michelle was saying, the previous design was all about consistency, and it didn't have a lot of personality. And I think with this new approach, what we were trying to do is allow each product to really come to life within its own category and convey the personality, a sense of joy, anticipation, and trust that we want our guests to have. We want that to be carried through in the packaging.
100%.
I remember when we were doing those lovely early store walks, and I remember walking around with Michelle and Brian, and the stores are just sublime. They're so beautiful, and you would find yourself wandering around the most amazing fresh fruit and vegetables, the fresh coffees, the lovely meat counters. And I think it already felt very inspiring to say, do you know what, when you walk up and down the aisles, and particularly when we're looking at the own brand range, how do we get that same delicious buzz of excitement from, just as Brian's saying, you don't want a cookie cutter. Without being rude, because I don't mean to be rude to the fresh market, but you don't want to lose that excitement just because you're going up and down the aisles, So how do we get that lovely celebration that we've enjoyed already throughout the rest of the store?
But the fresh market's approach to private label is not like other grocers, right? If it's got our name on it, it's really special, right? It's not meant to just be a national brand equivalent. Now, granted, we might have some of those, but the vast majority is truly meant to be something special. And, with this brand refresh and partnering with Equator, with that intent being applied to then the design execution, I think is how we ended up with such beautiful products and designs with this round.
And you've all talked a bit about injecting personality into the design. Can you talk me through that a little bit? What is your personality and how have you captured that through the design?
Yeah, I'll at least start.
Please.
As a brand, we want to be perceived as approachable, right? We are a higher end specialty grocery store, and sometimes that can come with a certain air of exclusivity. But, when you come in, we pride ourselves on that guest experience that you have with the team members. It's friendly, it's approachable. We're not taking ourselves too seriously. And so in conversations with Equator, we're like, okay, well, what does that mean to packaging? What does that mean to whether it's a cake box all the way to just a basic coffee cup? And actually the coffee cup, I think, is a great example where traditionally that's been, let's throw the logo on it. It's great. Check that box, send it to print. Equator presented some options, one of which being a very playful illustration style on a coffee cup. And it actually made some internal people here at the Fresh Market a little nervous. Like, should we pursue that? I don't know. Is it on brand? But when we presented it to leadership, it was one of the fastest decisions I think I'd seen them make because it had that reaction. There was an emotional reaction, just a smile, a sense of discovery as you're turning this cup to see the different elements on it. And I think that's a prime example of just injecting personality into some of the packaging. And I'm sure there's more, but that's the easiest one.
With the coffee cup, I think you wanted to really tap into that feeling of, we had some lovely early conversations about when you go to your favorite coffee shop and you're wandering around with your cup, there's such a sense of pride and belonging to something like a coffee cup, and we thought, crikey, with this amazing story that we've got to tell at the Fresh Market, we want the guests to be wandering out into the parks, back to their desks, and do it with such pride. I'd be delighted to have one of those Fresh Market cups on my desk at work because it has got that sense of belonging. And, the only thing that I would add to what Brian was saying was, again, the findings from that lovely week wandering around the store. It's all about conversation that you have with the amazing staff at the Fresh Market and, the knowledge which is expressed. And we thought, how can the packaging chat to us? We want the packaging to speak to us like it knows us. And I think Brian's already touched on it. You don't do that in a very lofty and over premium way. You do it in a very familiar, warm, humorous, conversational way. That's the authenticity of good packaging design. And I think, we really wanted people to, I love being in a store where I pick up a package of anything and I think, crikey, it's almost like these people know me, they're speaking to me just in a way that I really recognize, and that was incredibly important, I think, for the Fresh Market because it is exactly who they are as a retailer.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, the coffee cup, it also tells the story of who we are. So woven within it are what we call Easter eggs, little nods to the history and the foundation of who we are as the Fresh Market. And to Glenn's point, anybody walking out of the store, this catches your attention, somebody's going to see that. And somebody who's never been to the fresh market is going to go, that's the fresh market. And I think it just challenges perceptions that there could be. I think it invokes curiosity, back to that emotional connection. We really wanted our guests to love our products as much as we do, because we are absolutely in love with food at the fresh market. And in fact, that is across all of our packaging now is loved by us, because it is.
Yeah.
So it really sounds like quite an organic process, the design process here. And it also sounds like you went for more of a bold choice rather than maybe the status quo choice. I also love the fact that you call them your guests rather than customers, and that says a lot about you as a brand. I'd really love to hear when this was rolled out, what kind of feedback that you got regarding the design on a wider level.
Wow. Well, that's a good one. So we are probably about 55% rolled out. So we literally just started this process last June. We are about 14 away from finishing it now, which is tremendous given we have redesigned over 600 items. We are just now starting to have those conversations and building that campaign of awareness with our guests as they're seeing these new things show up. We're sending out signage that says new look, same great product that you've always loved. And it's giving us the opportunity to start to have that conversation with the guests, just to reintroduce them to this brand and just to reassure them that it is the same quality that they trust and the great tasting product, because everything that we do is built on taste. So that is something that we are continuing to lean into. I do think what we love about this is that it should start to help our guests to engage with our brand more. We should start seeing more posts or positive comments or new guests coming to see who the fresh market is. So I do think there's some things that we'll start to see as we really start to go after that with the campaign that we are creating now and the story that we want to tell around it.
And even kind of building on that, Libby and Michelle, I think about the bakery department specifically. Yes, that's packaging, but it really influenced the whole department in the store with quite a noticeable change. And I think you had said earlier, Libby, talking about a bold choice. Well, we turned all the packaging in our bakery department to be this pale pink. So all the boxes, this is a cake box, but then all the other cookie boxes, croissant boxes, everything went from a very safe white and green, very functional packaging look in the bakery department to everything in these pink boxes. And so that was very noticeable. It did make some people uncomfortable, but I think our guests have really embraced it. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback, and it really stands out within the store as a department, not just an individual package. And now we have our larger cake boxes. This is really something that people are going to want to take to a party or give as a gift, right? It's not just a functional box. It is a beautiful package that our guests have for those large cakes.
I remember when we were all sitting around and talking about the concepts for the bakery boxes, that was the absolute thing we had to hit. We used to say, we are not presenting it unless it's something that you would be absolutely beaming with pride to take to your party. And I think it was a really good way of thinking of it. And the other thing which this also taps into is the ambition was that we, of course, wanted it to be a recognisable fresh market home brand range. But you can see already the bakery, well, why can't that reflect one of the finest patisseries of Europe? You know, the coffee cups. Why don't we adopt that language of the cool and trendy hipster coffee bars? We wanted that experience of wandering up and down the aisles to just be a lovely riot of, crikey, it's the patisserie, it's the fishmongers, it's the butchers, it's the coffee shop. And that was a real joy to to find ways of making it absolutely the Fresh Market own brand range, but giving itself space and permission to jump around the world aesthetically and celebrate all the amazing flavour and taste.
Yeah, just to add one more thing to what Brian was saying, especially because the bakery boxes are such a great example of how guests responded, to the point where we noticed that as we were in stores and we had just coworkers come back and say, I was just in the store and this lady was in the bakery and she had 4 boxes of the cookies in the pink packaging. And one of our coworkers engages with everybody and she's like, wow, where are you going with those? And she's like, I just love this. I just love the new color. I'm giving these as gifts. So she bought 4 boxes of cookies just because they were gifts for her, because we went from a functional package to something that feels more celebratory. So now she was just giving out boxes of cookies as gifts. I'm like, that's amazing. So something we didn't even expect, it elicited such a cool response. And that's not the first time I've heard that same example.
That's brilliant. So far you've highlighted to me the coffee cup and your bakery range. Is there anything else you would like to highlight that stands out within the product?
Libby, I don't know if we've got enough time.
I know.
I mean, off the top of my head, I think about the kettle chips.
Mhm.
It was a more premium tier. We've got 3 tiers of private label. The Everyday Extraordinary is your typical, potato chip. But then we had our second tier, chef inspired, a little bit more of a premium in quality and flavor. And the packaging that the Equator team put together for that was just beautiful. A combination of a very simple photography, but then just amazing illustrations in the background of it. It really, personally, it stood out to me. That's one of my favorites.
I think that's almost worth digging into a wee bit more, Brian, because the thing that I loved, and it did come from you guys right at the top of this, we're all used to the familiar good, better, best, or value, core, premium. It gave us so much inspiration to say, there's no value range, there's no core range, Our food is extraordinary every day. This is the everyday extraordinary range. And that's a wonderful starting point. And rather than premium, it's the chef-inspired range. These are the products that have been absolutely poured over with love by the chefs and the bakers, and the heart and soul that's gone into these. Then you've got the uber premium gifts, these amazing rare treats that pop up in the store like little jewels, So I think just the naming of the 3 tiers was a wonderful start point. It's the conversation, it's the storytelling. It's quite unique in the way that I think we approach the conversation on pack. We have quite a bold central panel on a lot of the packs, and Brian's already mentioned that the potato chips, just to have front and center a delicious conversation on the pack, and we adopted that across quite a lot of it. And then going on to the back of pack stories, it's all about the chat.
Yeah, I think the kettle chips is a good example too. I think we actually won an award for that one as well at Vertex. But within that, the sea salt, for example, gorgeous illustrations. There's a lighthouse that's actually found on the coast here in North Carolina, because we are a North Carolina-based retailer. So it's just those little nods to who we are as a brand that continue to tell our story throughout each of these products that just make it fun. And like I said, we're really trying to get back to telling the story. And so creative copy, talking about how it's made, talking about the flavor inspirations, whatever it is. And I will say the kettle chips, we did launch those last October. It was one of the first of the new items to hit with this new look. And that item, 2 flavors that are, it's honey dill and sweet Thai chili. Both let's see how these do. One of them is performing 141% over forecast, and the other one's over 200% of forecast. So packaging and great tasting products, there's a winning combination all day long.
I need to come and try these flavors.
Yes, you do.
They're superb. They're superb. We kept getting samples, and you almost had to lock them away because, there's some very hungry designers in our place, and they don't last long. But I do think the illustrative approach, I personally feel like it's a lovely reflection of the product. I think if you've got this amazing product, the crafting of illustration, and we at Equator love to hand draw things. And I think when you see a product which has been crafted up almost as a mini work of art, I think it's a really good reflection of how lovely the product is going to be. It'd be remiss not to mention our delicious chocolate library was an example of that. Why just have 5 delicious bars of chocolate when you can create an amazing chocolate library, a little selection, a gift box where you can pop the chocolates in. And the team had this incredible notion that not only is it the most delicious chocolate, but it pairs beautifully with various wines and cheeses, etc. And it's just a real taste experience. And again, similar to the approach with the bakery boxes, if our ambition was that we want people to carry these out under their arm and just think, somebody's going to love this, even if it's themselves.
I love how passionate you all are about this. It's making me want to come and try everything. I want to ask next, obviously there's a lot of things you need to balance when it comes to packaging design. So you have obviously functionality, product preservation, and then the big one within the packaging world, sustainability. How do you juggle all these different things with this new branding?
Yeah, I think our approach with that was, right from the get-go, sustainability, it's important to all of us. This is the planet that we live in. Wherever we possibly could, we've never been believers in over packaging things for the sake of it. If you can be a little bit more immediate in the way that you package something up, you should absolutely do that. And thankfully, I think gone are the days where you have the bag inside a box, which is then wrapped in this, and so I think, again, there's a lovely feel and an honest to goodness approach to the packaging at the fresh market that with nothing is over packaged. I think we always went very immediate with that. And just from a technical point of view with the rollout, the way that the fresh market has been such a huge success for us at Equator is we kept the teams very lean and very knowledgeable. There's been some wonderful eye-opening moments during this that usually you think, let's get 1,000 people in the team and let's get everybody working really hard. And actually, and I think that's been reflected over with you guys at the fresh market as well, we've been a very, very tight-knit, happy, small family, and all these conversations about consistency and rollout and how are we going to do this. A lot of the conversations happened on a Friday evening, and me and Brian maybe WhatsApping each other saying, I've just had an idea, what about, So I think all those topics about rollout and how do we best do this was just keeping it very conversational. We kept all our minds open to all ideas and just tried to get the very best results that we could.
Yeah, I would say Equator did a great job with brand guidelines and concepting up front first. So we went through the brief process as well, and then came back with the look that we approved, and then they did the focus groups. And so we aligned on all of those and had that vision of what this needed to do. And then it also had to come in from a cost standpoint. So all of this was happening as costs were starting to increase across all industries. Commodities were starting to go up, coffee, eggs. There was just all the fun things that we deal with from a retail standpoint. And so cost also was one of those things that we would come into play and have those conversations with our vendors, trying to keep our costs at bay. And so all of that was handled. And to his point, I think the small team, we are very small on the fresh market. And it was literally me, Brian, a project manager on my team, a category assistant on my team, one of his designers, a copywriter, and the small team at Equator. And we have worked on this from start to finish, and everybody got all of this done. literally in a little bit over a year. And I would say it is because we all had the same vision. We were all unified, collaborative. We all knew what that North Star was. And we were trusted by leadership on their side and our side to make these decisions and to run with this stuff. I will also say that they did such a great job of learning who we were in the front end and knowing what our brand promise was and who we aspired to be, that when they came with the concepts, we probably out of 500 maybe had 4 to 5 max that we said, yeah, you're going to have to go redo that one. We walked out of every single concept meeting and we could be shown 9 to 10 concepts sometimes. And we like that one, that one, that one, that one, slight tweaks. And we were off to the races on version 1 artwork. So we really just trusted that we hired somebody who knew what they were doing, who had the professionalism, who had the portfolio, who had the quality, who had the expert. I mean, had all of that they knew what they were doing, to the point where our subjective opinion of what looked good needed to sit secondary to their leadership for this. And likewise, I feel like they did a great job of, when they challenged us in our comfort zone, if we needed to reel them back in, we would reel them back in certain areas. The smallness of this gave us all the freedom and the autonomy to do and accomplish what we were able to do, which did result in a lot of design awards at Vertex for them, for us. So it's been a great mutual partnership.
Michelle, there's a handful of things that I think need to be expanded upon that you just touched on. First, Libby, just for your listeners that may not be familiar with the fresh market, we're not a big player over here, right?
Wow.
Compared to a lot of the competition. We are a specialty grocery store. We have 170 some stores now, but compared to a lot of our competition over here, we're not very big. And that, extends down even into the teams that Michelle was describing. Also, the ask that we had from leadership. Yes, we talked with Equator for quite a while before we ever got started. But their ask was to have a lot done in a very short amount of time. Mm-hmm. Historically, we have done some of this internally, the private label internally, and it would be as needed. But the ask this time was to do all these SKUs in a very short amount of time. And so there was no way that our internal team had the time nor talent to execute that. So, I'm very thankful that the leadership invested in us partnering with Equator to get this done, because their assignment, their task was quite a large one. And again, building on what Michelle touched on, the planning that we did with Equator upfront for the different tiers, the system, the design system and guidelines that were put in place, that was essential in order to meet these tight deadlines. And so most of the products would kind of fall within that range. And that was great, because there's those products that are, well, this is a separate, a unique situation. The chocolate library that Glenn mentioned is a prime example of that. So then we could spend more time on those because we had the guidelines to kind of work through the others. And then the last thing, just to build on what Michelle was talking about, was the trust that leadership had in Michelle and I and our teams, and then the trust we had with Equator. It was essential. And I would say there's no egos, right? I love that Equator would push us, and we almost expected that, right? But when it wasn't a fit, there weren't, fits and egos. It's been a great partnership with them.
I'd love the opportunity to also add to that. We met twice a week, and it was something that we all cherished. We absolutely loved it. I didn't feel that there was even like a client agency relationship. We were all just one lovely team. The team back at Equator were fighting over each other to work on this account, and the loveliness, the warmth, the encouragement that we got from you guys, it was incredibly inspiring. In both ways, it just snowballed because we were so wonderfully comfortable and so much enjoyed your company and your inspiration that you offered. I think it got the very best out of us as well, and like I said, those twice weekly meetings were the highlight of the week for everybody involved here, so I think it was a career highlight by a billion miles working with the Fresh Market. It's been a joy from the first second. I dread the day where it finishes.
On that note, thank you so much all for talking with me today and for sharing your story with our listeners here at Packaging Europe. It's been really fascinating to hear about the process behind this and how you worked this project together. Are there any final words you would like to leave our listeners with before we go today?
I think we probably could end very well that if you are looking for an agency, you should really look at a mutual partnership and a mutual trust. I guess we never went into this thinking we needed a partner. We wanted a guide. And so that requires a partnership and an equality of value and mutual respect. And I think maybe other retailers look at their agency as an agency. We did look at them and treat them as part of the Fresh Market. And to his point, to get the best out of somebody, you have to treat them that way, right? And so I think they did the same with us. We did the same with them. And I think that is why we came out with the awards that we did, with the experience that we did, with the designs that we have. And now are able to be a brand leader in the market, even as small as we are, now helping set a standard and a benchmark that probably other retailers out there are looking at saying, how did they do this? Well, we didn't do it by treating them like an agency. We did that treating them as an extension of who we are. And so that to me is, I think, maybe part of that secret sauce to getting the result that we did.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, the only other thing I would say is, hey, if you're looking for an agency, I would maybe suggest Equator. And then if
or not, we'll just keep them for us.
Well, there's that. It's been a great partnership with them, and just getting alignment up front was key for us. Internally and with them, understanding exactly what the ask was, getting it just locked in and approved early. Because once it's approved, we were able to start really just churning out the pieces.
And when I'm wandering around North Yorkshire to my own supermarkets, I absolutely have my Fresh Market shopper on my shoulder, and I'm wandering around the place, spreading the word of the Fresh Market in my own little corner of the planet. So it's, to echo what Brian and Michelle have said, it's exactly the same for us. What an amazing experience. And without clients like this and a relationship like this, we wouldn't have been able to achieve half of what we did, So it's, it's been a joy.
Oh, thank you so much again. And it's been a joy listening to the three of you today. I can really hear the passion behind you all. So thank you again. And hopefully we will hear more from you in the future, along with our readers and audience here at Packaging Europe.
Brilliant.
Awesome. Thank you, Libby.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.